There we go.
Welcome. It is 6 o'clock. Today is February 4th, 2026. This is the Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee meeting from FAMPO. My name is Yolanda Hipsky and I'm calling the meeting to order. The second item on the agenda is the roll call and determination of a quorum. Ms. Hinkle, if you could give call the roll.
Tamara Banks, Jason Broughton, Ruby Bravo, Joe Brito, Justin Chenault, Rupert Farley,
Here.
David Faust, Denise Flatley, here, Robert Fogg, Glenn Goldsmith, Larry Gross,
Here.
Rebecca Herron, Yolanda Hipsky,
Here.
Michael Hoyt, Cassandra DeGroop, David McLaughlin, Jimmy Morris,
Here.
and then Aria Nair,
Yeah, Arya Nair here.
Aria Nair,
Mhm.
okay, cool. And Michael Cattell,
Yes.
okay, Ken Pogue, James Powell, Rodney Thomas, Alan Watkins,
Here.
Clinton Wells, Timothy Welsh,
Here.
Kevin Wilkinson. All right, and here we have four.
And we also had, did you get Michael Cattell?
Yes.
Okay, yes, all right.
And we have a four.
Okay, great. Do we have anybody online who wants to join?
Larry Gross is,
And he's okay.
and he said, yeah,
Okay, great.
he's on.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So we have a quorum. The next item is welcome and introduction of our new CTAC members, Ara Nair and Michael Cattell. Let's start with Ara. Welcome,
Thank you. Do I just say a little bit about myself?
please.
Okay, my name's Arya. I'm currently a master's student at Johns Hopkins, and I was looking at ways to get involved with Fredericksburg. I actually recently moved here from Virginia Beach, so I found this, there was an opening and decided to apply.
Welcome.
Nice to meet you all.
What locality are you representing?
Fredericksburg.
Fredericksburg. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
And Michael?
Yes, thank you. Good to be here. I am resident of the Falmouth District, Stafford County. Been in the area about 23 years, originally from Pennsylvania. I've been in revenue communications, marketing, fundraising, policy development for about almost 30 years now, in all of those different markets or enterprises combined. Started to get a little more involved in Stafford County over the past couple of years, and you may recognize the name. I ran for office, ran for supervisor in that district. So when my opponent, our supervisor now, Victor Keisha Evans, and I met, she said, I'd like you to work with me to try to keep Stafford moving forward. So here I am.
Excellent. I love it.
Well done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's great to have people who are new to the area and people who are familiar with the area to bring that nice balance of perspectives. Welcome. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the February 4th CTAC agenda.
Mr. Cooper, I move approval of the agenda.
I'll second the motion.
I hear a first and a second. Is all in favor?
Aye.
Are you hearing no any no's? Motion passes and we have an unapproved agenda. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the January 7th, 2025 CTAC minutes.
Cooper, I move approval of the minutes.
I hear a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion passes. Okay, next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any members from the public who would like to make a comment or have written letters?
No, we don't have any letters.
Hearing none.
Wow.
I also, just a note, Rebecca just joined online, so hello, Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca. Great. Okay, but we have no comments from the public. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the VDOT and transit reporter problem. Does anyone have any comments that they would like to report?
Where should I start? No.
Your comments cannot include the word snow.
Right. Nice.
Yeah, ice.
I would commend VDOT because my road got plowed so many times, I lost count. They plowed it when it didn't need plowing.
I'll second that. That one of the administrators for the Fredericksburg residency, and maybe he forgot that I had a cell phone in my cell. He answered, and very, very helpful, very customer focused, citizen focused, and got to be about the middle of last week, and I said, can we at least have some salt and some sand in the subdivision? And that began to loosen things up a little bit, even with the sub-freezing temperatures. And lo and behold, the next day, a cat grader showed up. And man, they scraped those roads clear entirely. We have a problem with everything in front of the mailboxes, but that's a different story. So thanks to VDOT for doing what they can do in light of a very difficult situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Then no other problems. I guess you can take that back to VDOT, that y'all did a great job with the ice and the snow, and we are very appreciative. Thank you. Great. Okay, so the next items, is the action item discussion. First item is the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail discussion. This came up a few months back. I think I had mentioned it, and it seemed like we needed to get more information out. So I've been working with the staff at FAMPO, and I've reached out to Jennifer Wampler, who works with the National Park Service. She is, I understand you have experience working with
DCR, yeah.
DCR, excuse me, DCR in Virginia. So you know our state, you know our region. And you are an advocate for the trail, and we would love to learn more about it and see how we expand it.
Great. So, of course, I'm interested in what you guys would like to see happen. So just, after this presentation, feedback. Next slide. My name is Jennifer Wampler. I was the Trails Coordinator with the Department of Conservation and Recreation for 18 years, and I retired from that position. And I'm working through AARP has a experienced workers program. So I'm working part-time with the National Park Service on the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail as their partnership coordinator. So I'm just going to give a little background, some of our challenges. We did a partnership strategic plan in 2022, so I'll highlight some of the things that came out of that effort and some successes we've had since we hired a new superintendent in 2022. And then talk a little bit about our roundtables, which are kind of our engagement outreach meetings we have a 900-mile corridor that we try to somehow bring people together on. And so that's one of our ways of doing it. And then just, talk a little bit about what the vision for the trail is in this region. And then we are working on our comprehensive plan. We're going to be kicking that off next month. And so there's kind of a call to action there for you guys to participate in that effort, as well as some of our roundtables. So next slide. So just a little bit of history. We're a fairly new trail as far as trails goes. There was a national trail study done in '63, and out of that, a feasibility study was authorized for our trail. 10 years later, that was conducted. 10 years later, we became a designated park unit. So a lot of national trails are not park units, but ours is both a national trail and a park unit. So they recognize both sides of the Potomac River. And then, 99, we got one staff person. And so he retired in 2018. And when he retired, Don Briggs, if any of you knew him, we didn't have a replacement superintendent for 4 years. And so Jerry DeYoung is now our superintendent, and she came on in 2022. Yeah, next slide. Oh, this is the Neabsco Creek Boardwalk in Prince William County. I'm sure Yolanda knows it very well, but it's just a beautiful destination boardwalk and part of our trail network. Next slide. This is the Potomac Science Center, George Mason University, and the trail goes right in front of that along the creek. And I'm just using this slide, just this is a super urbanized area, but people have worked hard to try to integrate some scenic qualities into the trail. And we don't own any land. The federal government does not own any part of this trail. So we're completely dependent on you guys to help develop pieces of the trail that are destinations and that are, as scenic as possible given the constraints. Next slide. And unlike, the Appalachian Trail, where there's a lot of people who go for the whole thing or for several weeks or whatever, most of the people who are experiencing our trail are going out for a weekend. We don't have a lot of through hikers. We still have some gaps in the trail. And it's a very braided trail experience. So in the Northern Neck, for instance, you have the Northern Neck Bicycle Trail, which is all on road. And there's some brochures back there on that little table if you guys want to pick them up. We also have sites, that are partners with us. So Ferry Farm, the trail goes through Ferry Farm. You can get our stamp at some sites. You have a little national park book where you collect stamps. In Loudoun County and Fairfax, it's mostly hiking trails. So there's a little brochure about that. But I'll pass these around. These are for the entire trail if you just want to get a sense of. It goes for 900 miles. It goes through both of the national heritage areas in southern Maryland and the Northern Neck, and passes up through Mount Vernon Trail. It goes around Civil War defenses of Washington. It goes through Rock Creek Park. It goes onto the C&O Canal, follow the C&O Canal to the Great Allegheny Passage, and then the Laurel Highlands Trail. And all along the way, there's colonial history. There's things that happened with George Washington. There's all kinds of Native American history and culture, and there's just so many stories to tell because that's really how America grew through that corridor and through the canal, and I'll pass that around too, just in case. So we also are a water trail. So if you're canoeing out on the Potomac, or on part of our trail and or on some of the creeks. So it's really equestrian, mountain bike, hiking, bicycling, it's whatever our land managers allow, because really, as I said, so we're working with you guys to connect a trail net. Slide. We've tried to build in water access because we're the Heritage National Scenic Trail. So, and when you're up along the C&O Canal, which gets 5 million visitors a year, we would like to be able to share some of that trail love to places like Colonial Beach that would really like to have more people visit. And so if we were a connected network all the way to Colonial Beach, I think that would be happening a lot more. And I'll talk about that a little bit more on another slide. That's just our website. So I encourage you to go. There's an interactive map where you can zoom into where you live and see where the Potomac Heritage Trail might go near you. Slide. So we did a geology and paleontology study in the northern part of the trail, and we're working now in the southern part of the trail. So might be contacted by somebody if you have property and you'd like to have some work done. So these colors represent the different geology, the underlying geology. We go through 5 different physiographic regions. So there's a lot of diversity in our trail, and this just kind of shows that in a really, really visual way. Next slide. Some of our challenges, with all national trails, when you talk about working with different counties all along, you know, your 900-mile corridor. You know, it might be public works in one county, and it might be tourism in the next county, it might be parks and recreation in the next county. And also with the regions, we want to work with the regions, but some regions don't even have a bike and ped person or coordinator, like in Western Maryland, for example. They're pretty focused, the region's pretty focused on transit. And so that's a big challenge for us, which also gets to the communication. And a lot of our partners can't understand the compliance, you know, at the federal level, all of the, just how complex that is. Next slide. But specific to our trail, we have only one permanent staff position, which is Jerry DeYoung, and she's worked hard to bring in some temporary staff members like myself. It's the only national trail under the National Capital Region. So all of the federal people who kind of oversee what we do, they don't necessarily understand what how a national trail works. And so it's been a learning curve for all of us there. We don't have a philanthropic partner. So if you talk about the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, you know, what would the AAT be without that organization? So at our next roundtable, which is March 19th, we're really going to focus on trying to get more feedback from people about how we can do that now. I mean, that trail developed a long time ago when there was the Greatest Generation and a lot of people who were out volunteering, and it's a little bit of a different picture now. So, you know, what's the best model? And then just DC Metro Natural Resources. I mean, if you put up a do not litter sign, you can't put them up in 170 languages. And so a lot of the people who are working on the trails have more of a siege mentality of just like how much litter they have to pick up and that kind of thing. Whereas, you know, we feel like we can bring volunteers to the trail that will do a lot of that work, that will help clear out invasives, so it's just that balancing act. Next slide. This is downtown Alexandria on a rainy day, just talking about, you know, the resilient communities. We've got that climate change and the challenges associated with that. A lot of the trails in Fairfax were developed along stream valleys. So that was one of the things that came up in our partnership strategic plan. And one of the things that we're trying to work on is just educating on, you know, the best methods for trail development, best methods for maintenance to sort of work with nature. Again, we've got a few gaps. Stafford County is a challenge for us. And then, you know, making the connection through King George and then into the Northern Neck. And then, you know, is it okay to be on road? You know, maybe we need to widen the shoulders for safety. So, and branding and marketing and signs, we're doing a lot of work now on identifying where those gaps are in the Northern Virginia region and putting those signs in. So that's something that we really need to tackle in this region as well. Next slide. These are some of our successes. Again, our superintendent was just appointed in 2022 and had the partnership strategic plan done where we brought in all of our partners to help us figure out, you know, prioritize how we were going to tackle what needed to be tackled. The Northern Virginia region has been working with us since 1983, the regional commission there, and we have funded or helped support staff positions so they could do a lot of the work that we just didn't have the capacity to do. So you'll see NVRC a lot in these successes. They did an impact study, a corridor analysis, wayfinding and amenity study. You know, they have developed this beautiful dashboard where you can go in and, you know, see where the bike stores are and the restaurants and where the trail goes in relation to destinations. And they did a bunch of maintenance workshops last year. I don't know if any of you all participated in that. This year, I think they're going to be focusing maybe on some trail town pilot studies and maybe some scenic viewshed inventories. But we're starting up our roundtables again, and there was a lot of institutional knowledge that was lost when the superintendent left. So they've had to do a lot of work getting the archives all pulled together. They're doing resource inventories, like I mentioned, with the paleontology and the geology. And we also developed a really nice display, and we'd like to go out to share in events that where if you guys want us to set up our display, especially related to the evolution, please let us know. We'll be glad to come out if we're available. Okay, next slide. I mentioned the Northern Virginia region, and I just want to talk about them a little bit more. We have 9 regions all through the trail. And actually, don't get offended, but Stafford County is considered part of the northern region because we have it divided into the sort of the northern neck. But I realize that there's a little bit of a gap there in terms of not being the same as the regional commission divisions. So next slide, I would just like to share some of the stuff that the North Virginia Regional Commission has done. They did an impact study that showed that $494 million annually was the economic impact of the trail in Northern Virginia. $4 million in avoided government transportation costs. Next slide, please. $55 million in avoided annual health care costs. I mean, it was a really well-documented study, and they brought in BBC Consulting out of Colorado, and they didn't just do the study. They had workshops, webinars where they taught people how they came up with these figures. And next slide. Also with their wayfinding and amenities study, they've had webinars telling people how they use Survey 123 and GIS and volunteers to go out and collect data on where the signs were and where the amenities were in Northern Virginia, so that they could put this map up and decide where the weak points are, where we needed to go back in and add signs. Next slide. This is just a little showing the crowdsourced data and how that worked and how they taught about that. Next slide. And all this is on their dashboard. So, you know, if you have a chance, please go check this out because they've just done such a good job of providing visitor information, which was missing. Next slide. Our team has also been working on the National Park Service website. We've done a lot of redesigning along that to make information easier for people who are interested in learning more about the trail. Next slide. And this is just talking about planning our roundtables. We have planning teams that help us come up with the content for those. Unfortunately, I think Eugene Lowe was on the team for representing staff, and so I didn't get a replacement there in time for this past year. But I'd love to have people from this region on our planning team. And when we do our March 19th roundtable, we're pulling in speakers from national trails all across the country so that we can learn, you know, what models are working, how, so that we can try to figure out what's going to work for our trail future. Next slide. And the main goals of our roundtables is try to get us all on the same page, to explore the trail network, what's happening where, so that people can share, you know, their success stories and learn from each other. Also building relationships all along the corridor. And new to that, to this administration is a real emphasis on supporting gateway communities, which is why we're looking at doing some trail town pilots. This is a picture of the trail where it crosses over the VRE tracks into Featherstone National Wildlife Refuge. So because we're in such a you know, we go along the corridor with 95 and CSX and all these military bases. It's not an easy trail, but we come up with solutions and working with our local partners. Next slide. So I'm sorry this slide is blurry, but Jim Lynch sent me this picture from their last Dogwood Railroad Heritage Trail meeting, showing what their aspiration is for the trail. And of course, they'd love to see the trail extended. The designated portion of the trail in King George now is the Dogwood Railroad Heritage Trail. They'd love to see that extended to Fredericksburg as a rail width trail, and I'm sure that's come up before. But you know, we just want a trail that's safe and that's scenic and that's satisfying. If you know, if you're a history person, does it take you to important historical or cultural places? And that if you're interested in getting to the water, does it take you to the water, or is it a good exercise route? Do you feel safe when you're out there? Are there options so that if you are a hiker, you can go have a trail to yourself, or if you're a mountain biker, you can have that experience too. We want to have the best trail possible in the George Washington region. And you know, I biked to work for many years, and I've seen that since the pandemic, it's gotten really crazy. I've had people scream at me, you know, so they wanted me to get out of their way so they could go through the red light, or they were going to knock me out because I was in their way and they wanted to turn right on red. And, you know, in Richmond, just since Christmas, we've had, I think, 7 or 8 pedestrian deaths. So I do think we need to step up our game in terms of trying to build these connected trail networks. And we don't have a lot of resources at the federal level, but we want to support you in any way we possibly can. And if that's working with this region, helping support a staff person and somehow that can, you know, pull people together. I'm sure there's a lot of other ideas out there for how we can work together, but I'd just like to kind of throw that back out to you. Next slide. And then just my call to action today would be join us for the roundtable on March 19th, just to learn more about, you know, how we can develop this partner that's going to be critical to making this trail experience all along the corridor really fabulous. And explore our interactive map and see where it goes in your region, where it's planned to go. And then make sure that your priorities are aligned with what goes in our comprehensive plan next year, not next year, this year, because it's going to go in the Federal Register as a center line, and then it's going to be really hard to change. So that's really important that we get that right. So my information is on the next slide. My address, my email address. So please reach out to me. I'll send you more information on all of those things or whatever you're interested in. So. Yes.
Oh, I enjoyed that. Thank you. At a previous meeting, we were discussing trails. Someone proposed the option of having a trail right next to an active rail line.
Yes.
Is any part of this trail like that?
No. Well, actually, that's not really true. The Great Allegheny Passage has a section of, it's kind of up the slope. So it's not right next to it, the way that if you go to the town of Ashland, you know, the trail's right there, but the sidewalks are right next to the tracks. But
I question the wisdom of doing that. Is there a policy that your group has in that respect?
our group doesn't, but the state of Virginia does. They have a way of working around CSX's policy, which is no rail with trail. And it's a complicated policy. Spotsylvania County underwent the feasibility study 10 years ago or so to look at rail with trail or rail crossing. And I don't think they ever implemented the crossing, maybe they did from the results of that study, but if the Department of Conservation and Recreation is the lead on that. So there was legislative work done back in 2008, and they laid out a whole process for how you can try to work with the railroads to get either rail with trail or a rail crossing. And I think actually Prince William is working on that now with Manassas, right?
Yes, from Manassas to, I think, 66 to connect to, eventually to connect to the Tyson's Corner trail.
I would love to see a success come out of that process that was developed.
Yeah. That's-
So is there, I was taking notes while you were talking, sounds like there's some friction points within, I guess, FAMPO's jurisdiction. Because I mean, it seems like the trail kind of goes towards, I guess, Quantico, and then, or maybe that's Fort Belvoir, or no, it's Quantico. And then obviously Colonial Beach is not within our jurisdiction. How would you recommend is it a talking with our elected officials kind of thing, or is it, because I just think, open land is becoming a scarcer resource by the hour here. So how are trails typically done, and how do you communicate that?
Well, I think that Stafford County has a line on the map for the trail, but a lot of it goes like along Route 1, which would be just like a shared use path on Route 1, which is not the preference of the advocacy community. They want something that's more inviting, but in some cases that may be the only option. But I love the way Prince William County is looking at it, and they're willing to put a little bit of investment in getting out closer to the water, like the Neabsco Creek Boardwalk and the Powell's Creek crossing that you all are developing. Do you want to talk more about that?
Well, I can. I mean, my involved. Okay, let me backtrack a little bit here. So I work in the planning office in Prince William County. The majority of the effort that for the trail is in the Parks and Rec Department. I attend the Trails and Blue Waste Council meetings that the Prince William County has. That's one thing. That's one thing is how many localities here have their own bike trail committee? Just the city? Okay, because yeah, and that's something that's really helpful. I was one of the first members in the Chesapeake Bicycle Trail Advisory Committee. I was telling Jennifer this before we met today. I was one of the first members of that, and then I eventually came into Prince William County, and they have their own Trails and Blue Waste Council meeting, which focuses only on trails, and the Potomac Heritage Trail is one of them. They also have a subcommittee group that's from the Trails of Blue Waste Council that focuses on nothing but the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail. My experience is I've been working with them for about 2.5 years, so I'm kind of limited, but I can tell you what I do know. For example, like this past year, the Trails Blue Waste Council made a recommendation to the to their Board of County Supervisors requesting that they apply for legislation money for to build a trail for. There's 3 gaps, and they wanted funding for two of the gaps, and then they would fund the third one. I think that funding legislation is not super successful this year. I don't know, but we'll see what the board, we'll see what the General Assembly does. I'm not sure how it's moving forward, though, I should say. But they're looking at it that it's part of the 250th anniversary for the country, that they're trying to focus on and try to make this into a big thing. That they meet, the committee meets monthly, and then the subcommittee meets monthly or more quarterly, depending on what business is. But there really is a focus on this group. It just really focuses on trails, and they really are trying to make sure that they connect the trails with the roads and the housing and the commercial and doing all that. And they help the localities prioritize the trails that they feel are needed. And also they help this is the Trails Blue Waste Council, and this is beyond just the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail. They help the county prioritize trails that they want to fund for, projects or, how to plan the funding for projects. So I'm not doing a really good explaining this, but I'm doing the best I can. So,
They have a really good, like, three-legged stool, like they have staff that they can work with that are supportive, and then they have the advocacy community that they can work with. And then they have the Trails and Council that, I guess those are the three that really help. They're appointed, right?
right.
So they're appointed positions and they really help move things along and keep everybody on task.
Yeah, I did not mention I did not mention the nonprofits and the non-governmental agent, groups like, what is it,
Greater Prince William Trails Coalition.
Yeah, because I try to focus on the government part. That's what I do. I had a few questions. You said that there was the NVRC did an impact study. What year was that about?
I think it finished up well, they put it on their website in 2022. So it was 2021, 20 something during that.
Okay, so it's still pretty fresh.
Yeah.
And it may be something that our locality, especially Stafford, could probably, definitely Stafford, because weren't they part of it? Did you say?
Well,
No.
they're not part of the Northern Virginia region. They're just, we've made some arbitrary lines
Okay.
in our region and how we're dividing our regions for the trail, but yeah.
But Stafford could benefit from it probably because they're closest to it. We could probably benefit some of it, but it would probably drop off a little bit. But that would still be a good study to look at. You mentioned that MVRC staffing funding, that the Park Service funded staffing positions.
Yes, we have a general agreement with the Northern Virginia Regional Commission and all the counties. And so with that agreement, we're allowed to do cooperative agreements, which can allow us to provide some resources for some of the work and help fund some of the projects that together we meet and we talk about what is something that we really need to get done. What did our partnership strategic plan say was missing that we need to really tackle in this region? And then through that, we jointly decide on some projects to pursue.
When you say a cooperative agreement, that's not a grant or anything like that?
That those you had copies of them. In fact, we had
the MOUs.
We had Stafford County, and
Okay.
It's really sad because I think it was signed in like 2017, and then when our superintendent left, and it was like a 5-year agreement. Superintendent left, we didn't get another superintendent, so it was really all the effort of getting the paperwork signed, and then Stafford didn't benefit from that with any kind of. But we have the agreement. Maybe we can just change the signatures and move it forward again, and then like if Stafford County needed a feasibility study done or something like along those lines, maybe there's a way we could support that.
Yeah, just to give a little bit of background, in preparation for today, I did a little, snooping around and found out that there's an MOU that NVRC put together with Fairfax, Prince William County. That's how I was able to get this copy. With the MPS Potomac Heritage Group. And apparently there was a very similar one done with us too. And I think it expired in 21? I think it was 2021. It was signed
right before we got our superintendent.
And I did a really quick glancey, through the two documents. They match a lot. So.
There's a lot of boilerplate in there, and those I use the term general agreement because that's the term we're using now, but it's the same thing.
Okay.
It's the MOU. Yeah.
Okay. So, and I didn't obviously read enough because I have to ask this question. Is the funding language or the funding instrument language
not in those documents?
Not in these documents.
But they get us to the next step.
They get us to the next step.
Yeah. There's no resources exchanged in those documents. It's just basically saying we're going to work together. Okay, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit here. If I'm understanding correctly, if we being, at FAMPO and, the region here, went back and re-reviewed this MOU, changed the names, updated the dates, did this, that would give us the instrument to go in and
for both the localities as well as our FAMPO to have a cooperative agreement with MPS to get funding for additional staffing.
Yeah, that's the general agreement that says we're gonna work together, and then we do a cooperative agreement that's more detailed, that talks about specifics and money and that sort of thing. And we have to have money in our budget in order to,
Obviously.
so those, it's some challenging national parks there, but, at least if we get the general agreement and, that's the starting point.
Well, you know what they say in planning, when in challenging times you plan.
That's right.
So here we are, we're planning. Okay, so that's good to know, because from what I'm hearing, if we put together, if we start working, the regions and the localities start putting plans together, maybe not now, maybe in 2 years, 3 years, we could actually start looking at putting the getting the cooperative agreement together, maybe getting an agreement for some additional staffing together, and then we can really start working on this trail in this area. Is that something feasible? And okay, so that's something for the localities to consider. Is that okay, good? And I think I also heard that you said you can set up displays. Is that like at the beginning there was a picture like at the park?
Yes, that was a picture of our display.
Okay. So if any of the localities needed you to come out to talk to them about this trail, the potential, the economic benefits of it, the challenges that your group is having, that the localities have, then they can reach out to you and you'd be able to do a PowerPoint like this and present it to those communities. Is that correct?
As long as if they don't conflict time wise, I'll do the best I can. I live in Richmond, so I'm only an hour away. I'm happy to come out and speak as much as you need me to.
Okay, that's good to know. So okay, that's very good to know.
And the display is more for events, like if you're having
right,
like the Caledon Wine Festival or something, and you want us to represent the trail so that we can talk to everybody in the community about the trail, then we're glad to come out to those as well.
And have a glass of wine too.
Yes.
After we're working. Okay, and then you talked about the Gateway Community Trail Pilot Project. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I can, but not yet, because
Okay.
I haven't met with the Northern Virginia Regional Commission about that. We're going to talk to them more about that. There's a book out there. Amy Camp worked with all the trail towns along the Great Allegheny Passage.
Right.
And they developed their little trail town book. And she has a book called Deciding on Trails, talking about how towns can really up their game to benefit more from trail traffic. And so that's there. I think there's like 7 things you can really look into. And so we would love to work with communities more along those. But
sorry, what you said, gateway community? Gateway
communities is a big emphasis of this administration. He wants to see economic benefits from national parks, and like for instance the Grand Canyon. There's gateway communities around there, so how can they benefit from having them?
Just like adjacent.
But in our case, going through all these gateway communities.
I don't know if it was like a specific
Yeah. So how can we bring more value to those places?
I think in Virginia, every town is a gateway town. History is everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's why the Potomac River is so important, because before we had highways, before we had roads, the rivers were our roads. And that's the important thing. That's why this is such a good project, because it captures so much. It captures economic development, it captures history, preservation, it captures environmental, all sorts of things that get off my soapbox here.
I got one question. On the Harry Nice Bridge, did they put a bike ped path on it or no?
They did not. What? I can tell you about that. Boy, I can tell you about that, because I was a staff member. I was staffing what they call the BIAC, which is Bicycle Infrastructure Advisory Committee in the Tri-County Council for Southern Maryland. The MDOT was that committee was very adamant about wanting to have a trail on it, and they pushed it. I think the cost was like $66 million, and MDOT decided they did not want to put that trail. The BIAC was making the argument saying, put the extra lane in. If we need it as a road lane, then we can, you'll have it built. But if you don't build it, then you won't have it. And it was rather messy. I will say this. One of the big arguments that MDOT was throwing back at the BIAC committee is about why they couldn't have it was because they said when you came to King George County, there was no trails there to capture the visitors, and so that was that was their argument back. So
It's my understanding that they're, and I heard this in Reddit, but I think that you can get export across the bridge.
yes, you can absolutely.
And again, we're working on a comp plan, so part of my thought is Barnesfield Park gets an upgrade. What we do there, I'd like to see a trail go from the end of the Dogwood Heritage Trail all the way to the nice bridge on 301, and that would also go right by our new upgraded park that we're doing.
And what you're saying is absolutely correct, because that was what MDOT came back with. And they said that it was going to cost $66 million. We didn't want to put the money into it. They came back and they said, what we're going to do is that we're going to have like you call up and they'll escort you over the bridge and then drop you off. And there was supposed to be some number or something like that to call. I mean, I don't know, there's a slope on that. I personally would not bicycle.
That's a terrifying route.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the slope is like that. I would, but there's stronger souls than me.
You mentioned, well, first I just want to make sure I understand clearly. So the National Park Service, all of this land through which the trail currently passes, or current and hopeful future, is all owned, is local.
No, I should clarify that we go through 20 units of the national park system. We go through state parks, we go through local parks, we go along VDOT right of way. So it's a really mixed bag.
In Stafford, is it as mixed? Do you know?
In Stafford, it's still mostly planned, but there's like sections, for instance, like Aquia Landing Park was a designated destination, and the Government Island was a designated destination. So there's places that we would love to be able to get to safely. It's just a matter of trail gets developed to get us there.
Sure. You mentioned some gaps respect to Stafford. Is the main gap, so to speak, the fact that there was this gap between superintendents?
I'm talking about physical gaps of the trail.
Physical gaps.
Because you have Quantico there, which is a huge challenge. Maybe we can go down, maybe the only option there is Route 1, going along Route 1, or I mean, is there a water taxi in the future? Are you guys all looking at anything like that down here? I know Maryland has a whole big water taxi study that they did for the Chesapeake Bay, but I don't know what kind of options there could be, but it's going to take some creativity.
It's mostly up to physical, geographic.
The physical gap. Yeah.
Superintendent. So your superintendent is over. Are you talking about the entire Park Service? Or are you talking about?
No, she's just the superintendent for the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail. We are, one of the administrative changes that was made at the federal level was they put us under the C&O Canal Historical Park. They put all the national trails under like a land unit. So the Captain John Smith National Historical Park is now under Colonial National Historic Park. And so we share some administrative staff. So the headquarters for our trail is in Williamsport, Maryland, where the C&O Canal headquarters are.
The last question. Notice it because I think you referenced March being the subject about philanthropic partnership.
Help us build a sustainable future is the
Yeah.
title of that.
Is there do you know if there's some sort of, there's no philanthropic partnership right now or funding mechanism? Is that
There's
correct?
no group that has signed the
Right.
paperwork
The
or been
Gates
willing to do the
Foundation or
paperwork, but there are groups who have put money into certain projects like the Potomac Heritage Trail Association. I think Greater Prince William Trail Coalition is now a 501c3, isn't it?
I wouldn't be surprised if they are, but I wouldn't know. I mean,
Yeah, where is that again? And is that something we all attend or is it just?
It's virtual.
Citizens?
It's virtual and I can send you if you wrote down my email, then I will send you the link to that meeting and the draft agenda.
You would just, if you send me that link, I can distribute it.
Yes,
and
So-
that's free, right?
yes, it's
Does
just
it-
virtual.
You know, for what it's worth, and I'm sure everyone else wants to ride this bandwagon too. With America turning 250 officially in a few months, now would be the time to act, try to get a series of major philanthropic partners.
Yeah.
You know, where it's what we would call in the fundraising business transformation. Something about as important as they are, $50 gifts, $100. Something we're talking 7 or 8 figures. You know, because it's going to take that obviously to endow this, if you will. Yeah.
So glad you're joining our
So-
meeting because
So for what it's
we
worth,
need people.
I would
like
encourage the supers, both your boss or to point of contact as well as somebody at the top too. And maybe there's talk within the administration about how do we prioritize or get on the wish list of America 250. Boy, I hope that this is somewhere in that mix of celebratory, because you miss the opportunity once it's 250 years. There always has to be some big hoopla celebration, right? Some major milestone that at least gets people who have transformational resources.
Like Jamestown 400.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same as that.
Yeah.
Right. It's not now or never,
Right.
but it's now. Or wait 100 years, right? Right. That's all. Thank you.
Right, maybe this is something that should be brought to the attention of the FAMPO Bike and Pedestrian Committee.
I mean, this was kind of the interesting thing because some of the discussions are like, we do have the bike head committee, but it's predominantly staff, jurisdictional staff. We do have citizen representation on it. But if you look at the components, this is much more of a staff level discussion, which is different than a lot of other kind of bike head and other greenway kind of committees or commissions in other jurisdictions, which are normally the appointed model where you have actually much more citizen like emphasis in a lot of those. We will of course show this. I mean, Carrie's been like included on the emails and just couldn't be here tonight for it. But yeah, this is something that we are being informed, but we thought it would be top for this to discuss.
Also good seeing that they have staff members too. They're aware of the existing locations and the planning areas or where new trails might go. So definitely see. So pretty good insight.
There questions or comments? So if I'm hearing correctly, we're gonna get some information about the roundtable costs. Where would I be able to get a copy of that impact study done in 22? Is that online?
That is online. It's on the dashboard that Northern Virginia Regional Commission has for the Potomac Heritage Trail.
Okay, good. So, and then if anybody here wants to have a presentation or a similar presentation for their boards or planning commissions or county city councils, they can contact Ms. Wampler, or even a display at a county event or farmers market.
If, you know, if it was city council or something like that, it's possible I could get one of the staff members from the Northern Virginia Regional Commission to come down and talk about, to tell their side of how they work with us and that kind of thing. And demonstrate the dashboard, that might be helpful too.
Yeah, and okay, so yeah, very good. Also, one thing about the comment that you had made, it's almost incremental how it happens. So like you put a line on the plan, and then as developments come in, then you start saying, okay, you got a dot here. How are you going to connect it? Well, they want to connect it over here, you want to connect it over here, and then that's when you get to the rezoning applications. Very, very incremental, interesting stuff. It will. No more comments on that. The next item was the Rochambeau Trail, and unfortunately, I did not get a chance to do much of a PowerPoint. Matter of fact, I think we just had the alignment. But I'd really like to use this time. Kind of what we have been doing already is that we've got this. The road. Let me backtrack. We've got these trails here that are very good. The Rochambeau Trail is a very historic trail that, again, like the Potomac, National Scenic Trail, builds on along the river. It started with the it's started with the march that General Rochambeau. I started from Rhode Island and to go down to Yorktown, which was at the end of the American Revolution. And one thing that's of note is we have, if you zoom into our area, you kind of, it starts showing you the layers. You can see the alignment that we have here going. We have several sites that are I think that there's a church, it goes through Fredericksburg, and then it kind of stops off. But again, it's kind of like another one of these trails that we have in this region that connect a lot of outside parts, that has a lot of potential for FAMPO region in terms of pulling in economic development, for connecting with multimodal transportation, and trying to do some of the things that we're doing. So I wanted to bring this up. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to do much history and research on it, but I think that this, along with the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail, is something that we should look at as a committee and try to promote. Stop talking.
If I could just,
Please.
Any National Scenic Trail, which is the Potomac Heritage, doesn't allow motorized travel. National Historic Trails do allow motorized travel, and so a lot of them are principally driving trails, but they really like to have places where people can get out and walk. So if there's a preserved section of Kings Highway, like in Prince William County, they have a preserved section of the old roadbed in Prince William Forest Park, where they can interpret that, where Rochambeau actually walked and that kind of thing. You can integrate those trails into the driving trail. The old Kings Highway is where he walked down, where the troops walked down. And that they have a philanthropic partner, W3R. If you were going to Google W3R, you'd bring up all the work that their philanthropic partner has done to build out a website with a lot of the history. And
you said W3R?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
W3R.org, I think it is.
Do they have a? I'll be really honest. I lived in the Hampton Roads area for a while, and I kept on seeing this Rochambeau Trail thing, and I started seeing it up in Northern Virginia, and then I finally had to Google it, and that's when I found out about this trail. So there isn't as much information about it that's easy for me to find. So I imagine other people can't find it either.
Oh, yeah.
W3 dash.
W3R, yes, that's it. So the 3R is the Washington Rochambeau Revolutionary Route National Historic Trail.
I mean, do they have a, I mean, do they have a presence, I mean, a strong presence, in Virginia, the W?
When I was working for the state, they had meetings down in Yorktown, and they had events down in Yorktown. But and I haven't been meeting with them in the past to see what their plans are for this year.
If I reach out to you after this meeting, would you be able to find some contacts?
Yes, absolutely.
What's funny is I grew up on the Rochambeau route, and I went by green VDOT sign to the Washington Rochambeau route for 50 years. But in the last year, there's a new sign that says Rochambeau route or something down in their new post.
Yeah.
Where it's at.
And their Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, is their land unit where they're actually stationed out of. So their superintendent works under with the staff at Valley Forge.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I had. I just wanted to bring it up, and maybe if I can get some more information, maybe we can bring somebody from that group in to talk to us like this. I don't know if anyone has anything else to add to that, or does anyone have any interest in any of reaching out to Jennifer afterwards? Maybe do it later on. Okay, so that's no more conversation on that. Let's move on to the next item. Which is staff reports.
Okay, I'll make this one brief, but first up, I want to make sure everybody in this room is aware that the next FAMPO Policy Committee meeting is next Monday, and it'll be held at the Stafford County Courthouse in their ABC conference room. So it's their main courthouse facility. This is a part of a process where the policy committee has decided that they're going to take their show on the road and actually meet in both Stafford and Spotsylvania County this year in their either their supervisors conference room or a room in the same building. So you have folks who say are in Northern Stafford, don't always get down to this area, say, hey, they can come and address the policy committee in a place that's a little bit easier to get to in the evenings. So be aware we have a change of venue for our policy committee. Next up is that our long-range transportation plan survey is now available. Please disseminate this to every single person you can find, their grandparents, their grandchildren, and whoever else they might know. Feel free to go through their own contact list and email them as well. But yes, this is our one big survey push for where we are trying to envision every single project, need, criteria for everything that we're going to be doing in our long range plan. So these are goals, visions. They're like, what is your community needs? What are your immediate needs? What do you think the future should look like? This is everything. And FAMPO surveys have actually been very successful in the past. So it's not uncommon for us to get well over 1,000 respondents. That's our goal again. Okay, maybe not just say 1,000, but we want a big turnout. So please post this anywhere and everywhere that you can. And even if you're not in the FAMPO criteria, but if you live or work here or anybody else who might travel through, please let us know. We track zip codes, so we kind of break that down, but we want to get as much feedback as we can in every aspect of our transportation community. So this survey is up. Lita, do you remember how long? I think it's up for 2 months. Into March, yes. Okay, it might be 45 days. I might misspoke. But in any case, it's up for a while, but we definitely want to start getting our numbers in. I think it launched, last Friday? And we've gotten a little bit over 100 respondents thus far. So, at least it is of yesterday. So,
Is there, just the logistics of how is that something we just click on the link and
Yeah.
forward button or a link rather, it will just sort of populate
Yep.
into an email distribution?
Yes, I mean, you can literally copy the links that's even in our agenda.
Sure.
So it's on our main page.
Simple.
The big push.
Get graphics attached and QR code to the survey.
So it's one of those simple, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
More or
this
less. Yeah, right.
should be on our system.
Oh.
So the FAMPO.
Okay, of course.
I got a suggestion. The next time we do a survey for that, we should time it where you can put the reminder in property tax bills.
Okay.
Way everybody sees it. Otherwise, nobody knows what FAMPO is.
I was gonna add, that's like a remarkable amount of respondents for just a few days. Like how do y'all normally get the word out for these types of things?
Oof. So that is the great question that goes to our staff member Eugene, who does a lot of that. But we have a very robust email mailing list, as well as a pretty active social media presence. So normally what we do is we work with other kind of information communication partners. So I'll always like to use like Joe Brito has a very large social media following, so he's very active of helping us push items. But we'll do that with, say, we work with the city's I want to say PIOs, but it's not necessarily PIO, but their information notification folks, Stafford, Spotsylvania. Basically, anybody that we've established like a communications kind of agreement or relationship with, we kind of help promote. So like we want to have like Friends of the Rabbit Hammock push, the Doggone Heritage Trail folks push. Like if it's basically any active entity, community group, we're saying, hey, please distribute to our members. And we try to develop that relationship over several years. So it's just not here's a cold call, email link, please send.
I know Fredericksburg recently started biannually sort of like city newsletter that they just kind of like, hey, here's what's going on and priorities, and like maybe in addition to the water bill or whatever, it's like I actually read that because it's like, oh, this is interesting. It's cool to see what's going on. Maybe like, a 1-inch thing. Might help. Maybe worth discussing.
We're just figuring out how to get to everybody.
Yeah, because I mean they spend how many thousands of dollars mailing those things out. Might as well it's worth the squeeze.
If it comes with
Tap it in.
I don't.
I'm just looking at the number you.
I mean, I can't tell you to go put the links above on stickers above gas pumps, but
Put them in diamond.
I can't say that, but that would be a great mechanism, but I couldn't get that.
You just wanted to put that out as something you can't do. Okay.
Yeah.
Guerrilla marketing. Yes, I'm a big proponent of that. So
There are a couple of staff and supervisors who have already said, the link to it. So hopefully they all.
awesome. Fantastic. Yeah, we've had a pretty good uptick from the beginning for just over the weekend. So we're happy, but we know that this is a long survey. We're going to keep posting kind of small email blasts so that we try to get those numbers to perk up. Because I think even with our other surveys, a lot of times you release and you have to trail in the responses. We try to time some of it sometimes with like try to get say in media press coverage, because we knew that like with previous studies, if like Freelance Star, the Free Press, or anybody else kind of does the story, we see another bump. Like we can kind of track, oh, we know exactly when that, article hit, we can see the traffic spike. We do have some click through data that we can kind of follow. It's not as robust as some other items, but we still get a pretty good idea of, is it our website? Is it our social media generating the traffic? Is it through other kind of the links that are through other media posts? We can kind of follow that and kind of get an idea. But that's a part of the strategy that Eugene usually does a very good job of getting those responses, and definitely when they've been a part of the team, it's definitely, you can tell that it's been fantastic.
No, if you target the base.
I would have to check. I would not be surprised if they are made aware. I just need to double check if they're or if that. I'm leaning to say yes, but I don't. Let's just say absolutely.
I could probably go to.
Okay.
You know, John, if Town Talk is in that mix, the news talk.
I can double check.
Ted Schubel seems
Mhm.
on top of it.
I think Ian has done items with him before, so.
Something in the studio. He's always looking to fill slots.
Okay.
Okay, see it here.
Okay. Yep.
All right.
Okay. Real quick, follow up on the TAC. The TAC actually met earlier this week. They followed the snow and the ice at 9:30 a.m. on Monday. The majority topics, we had some consent agenda items that are just letters of support for various projects, mostly the build grants that are going through. The one addition item that was on the agenda is that Stafford is also pursuing its own build grant, and their staff member promoted, just added that on as an additional item. We provided a quick update, actually very similar to what you saw in the last meeting, with our congestion mitigation, air quality, surface transportation, block grant, and carbon reduction updates. So right now we've had 18 applications from all three jurisdictions and Fredericksburg Go applying for this about $9 million worth of funds. We've had all projects now officially kind of screened in. We've had a couple of swaps. If you're not familiar, I think the city had a TAP application that got dinged points that they were actually expecting to actually do pretty well. And we've kind of shuffled some of our ability to move STBG funds over to TAP. That's not uncommon, so that they can still go after the Charles and William Street raised intersection there. So that's now being recommended to go before the policy committee. We don't have the funding numbers yet. We should know that in March, but we've basically worked through all of our partners that with the population distribution formula that everybody's getting their projects funded, that we might just having to screen out and redistribute things. So we're in a good position there. If you go to the policy committee page, because it was just sent out today, there's slides in there where if you follow, that's last month's. There are slides that you can just get like a one slide blurb for every single project that had been submitted. So this went out before that was available, but we do have that now available for everybody if you want to look at that. They also had more discussions over kind of smart scale. Basically, we are still in process. That's the big state level funding opportunity. We are seeing more kind of some challenges as far as the kind of status of the smart scale application for this round for the river crossing. It's getting to with smart scale and kind of some conversations that you've had with VDOT staff and internally, is that they're starting looking actually into a situation that the worst thing that could happen is actually getting funded in this round. Because with smart scale, it puts the jurisdictions on the hook for any cost increases. We don't have a formal alignment. And while there are members of the TAC who, from almost an academic point of view, want to just see how this project scores and kind of where it kind of filters in and how to better strategize this, there's a significant amount of work that goes into those applications. And we're kind of like, is that work worth it, particularly if we actually don't really want this funded in this round? Not necessarily for the next round in 2 more years, but if we don't have an alignment, that's going to actually put a large amount of risk onto the project, that at least for this iteration, until we do the NEPA and have a formal alignment, probably don't want to do this, because if NEPA comes back and in the alternatives analysis and says do a different route, and we have smart scale funding, we have a choice of either if this cost, if that alignment is more, which I think some of the estimates, can vary between $40 to $60 million plus, and probably would be inflation built out, that's a bit more. That could be a big one. And worse, if we have to give that funds back, probably won't get a lot of support for a second round application. So that's kind of where we are. There's more internal discussions of whether or not we need to move forward. Smart scale pre-screening applications allow us to choose 5, and then for the final application, you can only put 4 through. So right now, this one is looking at, do we continue with this as a 5 or drop this one and then actually add the I-95 widening to both lists? So depending on which project list has to drop a project, or if another project screens out, we don't have the river crossing being on a list that we now have a project that got dinged out somewhere else, and now it's in a project that, do we just drop it or do we put it on that list and actually risk getting funding for it? I know that's a very strange way to put it, but that's kind of the strategic discussions that we're having both with our jurisdiction stats, VDOT, and FAMPO internally. But that was a item that Ian brought up during the TAC.
Kind of regarding that, the build grant, the money that would be actually achieved for that, is that to go towards the NEPA study?
Yes.
Okay, so that goes towards. Do we have an idea exactly how much that particular study would be?
It's looking into the order between the NEPA and PE analysis and getting to the alignment anywhere between 19 and $25 million, which is kind of the sweet spot for the build grant application. You really don't want to go over $25 million. And so we're looking at it in discussion with kind of feedback that we've gotten that it's probably going to be that $20 to $22 million, give or take $1 million here and there. I'm not really saying that, but that's kind of where that grant is kind of lining up to be to produce in alignment.
There was also discussion regarding whether or not that may or may not involve an analysis of both Route 3 and Route 17, and also exit might have on I-95 and also on Route 1 too. Is that something that still has to be determined?
I mean, that would be ultimately are you asking about the smart scale or the build grant?
I guess it would be part of
So in smart scale, you're also required, and this is something that we've been working kind of with VDOT and actually trying to figure this out, because OIP Richmond likes for you to do an alternatives analysis where you consider expanding existing infrastructure. And we are asking for a river crossing Western 95. Well, there's no real infrastructure. Like, there isn't a easy alternative that we can just say, oh yeah, just add another lane to an existing facility versus building a brand new facility. So the discussion is adding a lane to 17 and then Route 1, and then it's a debate whether or not you even do the additional lane going back west or east in Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania as an alternative. Is that going to be a requirement? Because that is a considerable amount of work, considering that the question of whether or not it's an actual alternative to that project. And so we've been back and forth because OIP kind of says, no, you need to do this, and we're going to tell the district office that you're kind of in charge of making the decision-ish. It's kind of a little bit of a soft, go talk to them kind of answer. We're going to make this a requirement potentially because it's smart scale, but it's going to be the decision of the district, which there is questions of staff resources doing this level analysis, as well as getting the application, pre-application, all the materials available, kind of a tight window, because smart scale has been generally in process for the last few months with the pipeline study. So in theory, you would have done this a couple of months ago, and it wasn't identified until relatively recently. So that's where the smart scale is. For the build grant application process, it is there's going to be impact analysis for Route 3, Route 17, Route 1, looking at the alternatives again, much in a similar way that the previous studies have looked at impacts, but it's going to be on a much bigger and deeper level than, there's a difference when you're doing deep alternatives analysis versus what we did with our PELLEC study, and just identifying a core. So
the other question that I had in my mind too is the way that the river crossing smart scale project set up. It had kind or Commerce Parkway, and the only part that was in smart scale was the southern part connecting from Celebrate Virginia Park Community to go down across the river. But now we're talking about maybe pushing it back a few years, another round. Would that, but we're essentially asking for the NEPA process to be finished, to get the more specifics, before you put it into a smart scale application. At that point in time, obviously the NEPA study is going to include the northern part around Commerce Parkway. So then potentially put in for the entire project based upon whatever. Would that be an accurate
That could
possibility?
be, and it could also be phased. So that would be the other option. So it's not uncommon for it to be simply phased in the smart scale process. So you have one section you can build now, one section you can build, and with all applications, there's always the cost benefit. So anytime you can kind of, I mean, the dollar amount is a pure denominator. So anytime you can phase to drop the project cost, it's always a lot easier to submit $350 million projects than it is $150 million, because that cost benefit always goes into it. And you see that like in one of the more recent smart scale examples down in Richmond, Chesterfield area, the Route 1095, they've broken that thing up 3 times. And even then they might be actually another 4th phase that kind of went in a slightly different way. So yeah, that's not uncommon. So you can do both, like in the PE and everything, you get there and then phase the project.
Okay. If being that there's so much iffy information specific wise regarding how big the bridge might be, where the actual route would go and everything else. But the northern part, the Commerce Parkway 17 part, that's kind of more set in stone, not nearly as complex as trying to figure out everything south. Could the northern part possibly put in smart scale project?
I mean, if that is a priority of either Stafford, because at that point in time, it would be a Stafford specific project, so we'll actually let the county take the lead. The other item is that actually I think that there's more questions of how to tie in the northern extension into Route 17 with a much more in-depth kind of intersection analysis of how to handle higher volumes, as well as produce multiple alternatives of how that intersection will function. So within the river crossing study itself, it did actually take in and model kind of a new intersection approach. Like, for example, that Route 17 intersection prohibited left turns from that. There was some initial designs, but it wasn't to the level of what's the most optimum design. They made improvements, but it wasn't like going as far in detail to say, we've now looked at this intersection handling this amount of volume, and we've done multiple iterations. This one's going to produce the best kind of impact on transportation. They just made an improved one that is much more of a common design of restricting left turns, having fewer points of conflict, and just making sure that the signal facings are appropriate for bidirectional traffic. So you're just not just allowing east-west traffic, you're allowing north-south traffic, because right now the timings would not be accurate for what a different roadway configuration would be.
And regarding modeling too, if it was done, all of the modeling that was done national involved, including Commerce Parkway. So that being the case, does that throw off all the modeling as far as what travel times would be, the lost level of service and things like that?
Generally, no. I mean, you're always going to have a slight difference because that little offshoot wasn't developed for the initial stage. That's just actually something that was added with Michael Baker later. Now, what I said is we can definitely see in the model from the River Crossing Research Report that we're still seeing benefits across Route 17. But there are turning movements and the delays per turning item that they kind of see those red bubbles. And if you dive deeper into turning movements, then that would start looking a little bit different, because depending on the routes, I would actually say, I'm trying to think of like the Green Bank option. I don't think had that connection in, or did it? I'm blanking on that, but I have to go back. But you can kind of pull some information off of whether it was or was not included. If you're not having left turn lanes there, that's, you're still prioritizing through traffic, becomes more of a north-south action at that point in time. So it wouldn't be complete apples to apples at that level, but the research report will probably give you a good idea, and this one would probably, you'll probably see minor shifts, but it wouldn't be that overwhelming because the main reliance was that underpass, kind of off of 17 to get south. That's been the key feature through a lot of that to leveraging that
Yeah,
improvement.
there's literally different ways to get on to celebrate Virginia Park. And I guess the last thing is, if by any rare chance there was ever going to be a consideration of the crossing that would go in Cannon Ridge due south across the river into Spotsylvania County and ultimately connect to Free, how would that have to be funded? Be a pipeline study, or would it be something different?
It's probably a bit too big for a pipeline study. That is usually trying to leverage already identified areas or challenges or studies, and it's trying to identify a very specific treatment or preferred treatment to advance forward from smart scale. It really is like the final thing of here's your options, take a menu. We're trying to fix this, and here are recommendations moving forward. To fund that for the next stages of that, the first thing that will happen is we'll need to, and I'll kind of jump ahead here because the policy committee also took up this discussion, and they were basically going to go back to their respective jurisdictions to talk amongst themselves to figure out a position to move forward as far as we're crossing from Stafford into Spotsylvania. So I think they're on board with, I shouldn't say they're on board. They are taking that back to have their own internal discussions, which is kind of the first step. That's kind of how even this river crossing started in terms of
the 2 letters from
So once we get at that point, you know, FAMPO staff and or what's it? Not FAMPO staff is kind of bandwidth restricted right now with the LRTP and the CLRP and the TIP and a couple of other like required items. But if the jurisdictions, if Spotsy signs on, Stafford also signs on, then it would be, you can direct staff, and then it will be a question of finding funding for probably something that is similar to the previous river crossing study that's going to say, let's do our homework. When I say relatively small amounts of funds, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars isn't small, but it's better than spending millions of dollars. Yeah. To see, okay, is there a political agreement between the jurisdictions? Because that's kind of a big part of what the last river crossing did. Is there additional materials that we can slowly start building application materials to go after the next step? So that's kind of the next thing is jurisdictions agreement. The jurisdictions are willing to spend money or, you know, find the funds, either STBG, CMAC, other items. They can kind of shuffle things around as needed. And then it's just delivering that process again. So it's kind of the same roadmap that we had for the previous one.
And this is almost like our member reports that we've kind of like floated into it, but HB 1000 for RTAs. I mean, can you discuss a little bit of that? Because I know that's the agenda for the.
Well, that'll be in the agenda for the next item. So, yeah, there's been a House bill introduced that is exploring the options for Regional Transportation Authority, particularly between the city of Fredericksburg and Stafford, choosing language that you have to have a population of at least 150,000 in the last census. Spotsylvania is just under that, so they would not necessarily be included. I think there's always the option. I think they have in the language, it's an option to join in later. And it is kind of, it was built very closely to some of the previous work that the policy committee and the subcommittee and the staffing kind of developed of what would be your preferred language. Not necessarily, we didn't develop what the bill should read, but the policy committee at the time was looking at, if this is going to happen, what should it look like? Ultimately, the policy committee decided not to advance that language forward, but it looks like it's been picked up regardless. And so their language is actually very similar to kind of some ideas that we're following on, basically almost word for word. In part, there's some differences. I don't want to say it's copied, but it's basically taking some of the discussions and considerations that was done for that in the committee and the subcommittee the previous years and has solely rolled them forward into something that would be them. So as far as the kind of the future of that legislation, everything that's happening on, I haven't been paying attention. I'm mostly, oh, okay. And then I'm back down into other work right now. But I haven't been able to do a deep dive. I think Ian's providing the links and everything on the policy committee agenda. So that's relative, that's kind of correspondence for him. So
You know what the split was in the legislation?
the split,
Yeah.
I don't,
50, 60, 40, 70, 30? I can't remember what they said.
I think it's the 70-30 option, but I could be wrong. So don't quote, I have not really gone. I've basically, oh, that's been picked up and kind of ignored it almost intentionally for right now.
Top of your head.
I think it's the 70-30.
The nut to Stafford Spotsy. Do you remember what the revenues?
The revenues.
That was 2 years ago. I can't believe I was laying in bed the other night thinking.
Okay.
Gosh, it was 2 years.
Give me a second. I want to say that
Because the state automatically puts in 15 million, right?
well, I think we were requesting 20. When we were discussing, I would have to like go through.
Like 5 million, 10 million, $20 million.
Thanks to
counties.
back to the counties. It was several $1,000,000. I think the total recoup was between $30 and $50 million, and then how that split up, unfortunately. And it also depends on which. And again, I have
Jurisdiction, taxes you're doing, this and that. Yeah, I understand all that. I was just, I know in Spotsy, our transportation budget, what they give the Port Transportation Department about 10 million a year.
Mhm.
And then Paul takes 10 and makes it into a 300 some kind of way. I have no idea. But if you get another 5, you get another 150. You see what I'm saying? I'm trying to work on Spotsy for you, but you know how it is.
Yeah, and I think with this one, it's kind of
And we'll be at 150 next time for sure. We're not there now.
You just gotta tell them that if they want any kind of bridge that goes in spots, you can't do anything.
Yeah, well, that's that. I had to drag them across that one too. So,
but yeah,
I'm standing at the creek with all these horses. None of them will drink out.
and I think there's been a lot of the additional discussions of, and I need to look at how the bill is, but I know there was discussions, how do you split it? Like as soon as this has kind of happened, a lot of the details have now become very important. But yeah, I think there's been additional discussions. Okay, how does it split? Who gets recoups? I mean, yeah, I think there's still a lot of panel beating that probably needs to happen. And I
just think it's coming.
Whereas
before, it's kind of, I felt like it was surprise.
Yeah.
And then everybody was like,
yeah. But this one, I forget what the proper terminology, because it's the one thing that I actually kind of paid attention to was, I think it was, it's whoever kind of does the impact analysis for legislation items. What is the name of it? It's
Jill?
like,
No, that's not, they don't
Yeah.
do that, no.
I'm blanking on it, but they're actually going to do an analysis of actual like I had to do all the numbers of predicting through the black box. I basically had a black box in front of me. I could see the end, I could see the beginning. I could not tell you how it was happening in it, but they're going to have to do that analysis to do the impact. And I am kind of quietly like, okay, how close did they get? So,
but I actually read it. Can't remember. Exactly. It sounded like the same stuff we were talking about 2 years ago. Same taxes, the hotel tax,
it's very similar. It does.
marriage tax,
But my thing is you're going to actually have
sales tax. Sure, have sales.
like the state kind of impacting economists actually who have access to the actual formulas of how the gas taxes are actually divvied up in a much more per jurisdictions to actually say how much revenue is it going to actually potentially bring in and split and impacts of kind of that decision of the legislature. So very keen on seeing what that would be.
Yeah, the fiscal.
If we can get it,
Yeah, I know,
yeah.
yeah, I know what you're talking about now.
To bring these two up to snuff, we're talking about a regional transportation authority, the state legislature. So FAMPO, for lack of a better term, Spotty, Stafford, Carolina, experts, George, are about the only ones in the state of Virginia is not in an RTA. Okay, Northern Virginia has one, Richmond has one, Hampton Roads has one, the whole I-81 corridor is in one. We have none. But yet we sit around and talk about how we can't fund our transportation projects. And the state legislature attempted to put one down our throats 2 years ago.
I think it's happened like 2 or 3 times for the last 5 years. So in various iterations, it's been very.
Yeah, no, didn't get I'm for it, 100% for it, because we need to figure out a way to fund the transportation. Just plain and simple.
We need to build that way out of congestion, right?
That's right, Rupert. You know what it is. Listen, I'm the most anti-tax guy here. Yeah, I can guarantee you that. But we live in reality, and I think politically this year it's coming whether we like it or not. That Spotsy's corner like a rabbit doing this right now. But it's you know,
And now we have, according to, I guess, Ian's report coming Monday night, the new Virginia Transportation Secretary, who I guess was instrumental in creating the 81 corridor RTA. So,
is there any other legislation that you know about that's majorly affecting our transportation?
Not immediately off the top. So that's actually one of the areas that I'm like, you know what, I have enough on my plate. I don't follow the legislation. I leave that to Ian,
Okay, all right.
another staffer, to do that. So, but I can always find out. If you tell me, find out, and I'll bring it back.
No,
Always shoot me an email.
I'm good. Just wait for it all to settle out down there. No sense in getting all ruffled on proposed legislation.
Proposal, yeah.
talking about it Monday.
A lot of stuff settling down. It'll land eventually.
That's right.
That can be it. So.
Okay, is that, okay, any other questions for right out? Next item on the agenda is members' reports. Anybody want to report anything?
Still there.
Last month, I mentioned that there were the 20 monks and a little dog, Aloka, who has started Walk for Peace. They started from Fort Worth, Texas, and they've been walking to the DC area. Their purpose is simple. They are walking to spread a simple yet powerfully impactful message about that unity and kindness begins within each of us, and it can radiate outward to our family, friends, and even to strangers. The simple message is gaining national recognition. And I know people have been watching their route through the recent ice blizzard. They walked through the snow. I'm sure you've heard about how one of the monks were injured in Texas and he lost a leg. And maybe you heard about how little Aloka had to go for a little operation, but he's healing and is doing fine. And this determination is inspiring. And people have been responding by lining the streets, handing out flowers, water, fruits, holding signs, writing and singing songs about the walk. And there's large crowds greeting them everywhere. I'm sure you saw the ones in Richmond. And the governor announced February 2nd, National or Virginia's Walk for Peace Day. So anyways, tomorrow, you might have heard that they are going to be coming up to here. So that's my report, is that if you've been watching their path on their website, you'll see that they'll be walking through our region, and they actually are here in Ruther Glen. Tomorrow they'll be stopping at the Spotsylvania Avenue, 10300 Spotsylvania Avenue at the Lee Hill Building #1. And about 7 o'clock on Friday, they'll be walking up, to here, through here. So
We used to go up Lafayette.
yeah, and so I challenge everybody to go out and greet the monks. They sent the Citizen Transportation Advisory Committee. Let's show that let's meet that challenge and let's walk for peace with the monks.
Other than that,
There is one I'm so glad you asked that question, because if you go to the webpage for Fredericksburg and I think all the counties have, they have a Walk for Peace webpage. So I encourage you all to go looking at that webpage, and I challenge you all to come out and meet us all as we help the monks walk for
talking about
peace.
the Fredericksburg City webpage.
Yes, yes, yes. Let's show the rest. Let's make a statement to the rest of the nation that Virginia, our central Virginia here is strong.
I found out 2 days ago that a former sewer who is basically in charge of one of the major nonprofits here in the state has been with them since they crossed from North Carolina and will continue with them all the way.
All right.
So I haven't seen her in 35 years. So definitely gonna be.
I went to an event, private event on Saturday, and I ran into a friend I hadn't seen in 20 years. And she lives in Charlottesville. She moved to California. I moved to Southern Maryland, and we met. And so she's coming up to see the monks. Go watch the monks together. Good. So anyways, anybody else have a report? Digging out in the snow. Future items, Fredericksburg Go update.
Yes, so for a future meeting, I'm trying to line them up for March, but we'll have a Fredericksburg Go probably Melody Fowler if I can. Just give us an update of kind of the state of transit in the region, kind of upcoming projects, a little bit of updates to services. I think there was a request to see how some of the new transit routes were operating, and any other important kind of information coming along. So I am planning to try to get that. We'll see if March works, but that's kind of on the task. And the other item is that I think I was talking with Jason about this, but a lot of like the pipelines studies had surveys associated, because I've kind of reached out to Vidar a couple of times to say, hey, can I kind of pick over your shoulder to see kind of responses? Because I think it'll be interesting for this group to kind of actually see and go through some of them, just to kind of say, hey, this is what folks are talking about. I know with Jason, the conversation was with the Mine Road kind of improvements there, because it's one of those instances where safety is a very top concern for that particular corridor. But I think some of the survey results came back that they did not want to restrict the left turns in and out of some of the subdivisions, which is actually a big safety improvement that you can do. So it's one of those things where you actually had a survey where the kind of some of the primary concerns and treatments aren't actually lining up as far as the community's preference. So I think it'll actually be interesting to get a couple of those because I think it's a great pulse that we can take as a committee, just to see what other items have been happening. Because, you know, FAMPO puts out a survey and we get great response, but again, people go, what's FAMPO? If VDOT puts out a survey, folks are very specific. I know what VDOT is and I have an opinion. So I think it's always good to kind of review those. So.
Other items for discussion? Future items?
This is good, but I'll move we adjourn.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks so much for inviting me. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Hey,
Did you do fundraising, huh?
I